Zdravide. I'm the Moonlit Page Turner. Grab your treat, grab your tea, and let's talk books. For this month's read, we are traveling to Bulgaria. Now, Bulgaria is situated east of the Black Sea, and it's kind of sandwiched between Romania and Greece, and there also borders Turkey. So, for Bulgaria, Bulgaria is one of Europe's oldest states. It's been actually founded and established since the 7th century, but because of all the other stuff that happens in Europe, it's been part of many empires. So, because of where it's situated, right above Greece, of course, it was part of the ancient Greece Empire, and then the Romans come and take over, and it was part of that as well. It's also part of the Ottoman Empire, and then with the fall of the Ottoman Empire into the different world wars, kind of align themselves a little bit more with the Soviet Union. In fact, they will be a communistic country until the late 80s, with you have the fall of the Berlin Wall and the fall of communism, and so then they develop more of a democratic country. And then we see those changes take place in one of our reads, which is A Street Without a Name, and that is our nonfiction read. And Bulgaria is part of the EU and NATO. I do have a nonfiction read though. It is my first DNF of the series, and we'll talk about it. Before we get into this month's reads, let's get into our treats. Now, there was so many awesome foods to choose from Bulgaria, and I'm really looking forward to trying some recipes of some of their soups and other more savory foods. But I did go with the Medenki, which is the honey cookie. And really, it's kind of like a gingerbread. Now, you can dip. You'll see, maybe, hopefully, you can see kind of half of my cookie is covered. That is optional. They said to dip it in dark chocolate. I did not have dark chocolate. I made a couple of different alternative choices. So I had salted caramel to go with my gingerbread, and I will tell you, I've already sampled it. It's so soft and delicious. I'll post the recipe down below, but some of the alternatives that I made in case you were looking to make it yourself is they ask for avocado oil. I went with just olive oil. I did a little bit less than the quantity of the avocado oil, but I think the avocado oil would give it more of like a nuttier flavor. And then of course I did the salted caramel chips instead of the dark brown, and I also used just regular brown sugar. They asked for yellow sugar, which is kind of like brown sugar from what I saw. I've never actually heard of yellow sugar, but it's just light brown sugar. So those are the alternatives that I made in this recipe, and guys, they're so good. They put in the recipe, they had pistachios, which would have been excellent. I went with walnuts, which were also a great alternative as well, but you don't have to put any nuts in there. It doesn't have any butter or milk. It does have egg and flour in it though, but fantastic. All right, I'm gonna start with The Physics of Sorrow, and this is by Georgi Gospodinov, and I DNF'd it. Like, I had about 100 pages left. I tried to get through it, but it just got really frustrating for me with the random stories that just got plopped in there. It was a really interesting idea. I'll go into what the book is actually about, but it reminded me a little too much of the Bosnian Herzegovina book, How the Soldier Repaired the Gramophone, where it was like very ADHD and there's like sprinkled events in there, and it's very distracting from what the main storyline is. Originally, I was going to read his biography, but the descriptions of it were that it's like pictures and like very disconnected. And so after reading the I'm Not Your Eve and The Soldier That Repaired the Gramophone, I was like, I don't know if mentally I can do this where it's just linked together. So I was like, let me choose this fiction book instead. It has a really interesting premise. The premise is that our main character has an ability to go into the minds of people around him and relive memories. So he does this with his grandfather, where his grandfather had gone to a fair, and in the fair, he chooses to go see kind of like what we would call like a freak show event, but they say they have the Minotaur. The Minotaur is another really important aspect of this book. Now, the main character, he grows up, he learns things about his grandfather, like his grandfather had a secret son that he doesn't tell anyone else about, and he knew about like his entire life. But that story was really off-putting. His grandfather was in the war. He kind of takes up with this woman in a different country, and then he goes back home because he has a wife and young son. And then that woman from the other country sends him an outline of a baby's hand. So he knows that he has a secret son, and he never goes back. The grandson ended up going back, and so that, I was like, I was not okay with that from a moral perspective. But then the grandson goes, which is our main character, he like puts himself away in a basement, and it's like end of days. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening, and it's not necessarily a cohesive story. With all of that is his obsession with the Greek myth of the Minotaur. If you don't know, the Greek myth of the Minotaur is that it really is Athenian propaganda against the people of Crete. So in Crete, there is Minos. He was the king of Crete, and it's said that in Crete there was a bunch of mazes underground. The city of Crete itself was set up kind of as a maze, and this is why I'm saying it's propaganda from Athens, because they're the ones that created the myth, and that every 7 years they would have to sacrifice 7 women and 7 men to the Minotaur. So the Athenians would send people to Crete to be put underground with this Minotaur, who would essentially kill and eat them. But the author of this book makes a good point that bulls are vegetarians, but if a Minotaur is a half bull, half man, is that full vegetarian? Where the Minotaur comes from is that Minos's wife, who is the daughter of a god, she is kind of incensed to have relations with a bull, because Minos was supposed to sacrifice a bull, to this god, and he goes back on his word, so his wife gets punished by her own frickin' father. The whole thing is really messed up. Then part of the Athenians is that Theseus is there, and he's the one that's going to be sacrificed, but the Minotaur's half-sister says, hold on, Theseus, I'm going to give you not only a sword, but a thing of thread, so that way you can come back, you can kill my brother and then come back out. And so in this book, it's really an apology to the Minotaur about how messed up this whole thing is, where he's taken as a baby and thrown in the dark and then fed. So you kind of see how really messed up Greek mythology is. Not that we didn't already know that, but it specifically looks at the story of the Minotaur. So I appreciate that, because it's looking at the Minotaur in a different point of view, but it is kind of an obsession in this book. Hence, you have the title, and the sorrow, and the son really connects to this Minotaur, and when he's talking about the grandson abandoning his son, like the Minotaur was abandoned so there's a lot of connections there. Again, I got most of the way through. I think I had like 150 pages left. This whole thing is like 275. So I could have finished it, but I was miserable reading it. So it's my first DNF. The second book, though, Street Without a Name by Kapka Kassabova, I really liked this book. There was a couple of things that I wish she would have added to it. I kind of see why she did it the way that she did it, but I would have liked to see her life in New Zealand compared to her childhood in Bulgaria. But let me back up and get into it. So we start with Kassabova. This is nonfiction, so this is a story about her life. She grows up in communistic Bulgaria. So she talks about like the place that she lives in, and her family is a little on the poorer side. They have connections to the outside world though, so her like father teacher, and so he has connections to like England, and they can see things from the outside world, so she's not fully into it. But she does, this is all a reflection. And so she does kind of see that, you know, at a very young age, the wall was always there. When they talk about the wall, they talk about the Berlin Wall and the wall of communism, where the oppression is innate. And so it's like a world that they don't know anything better than. And then slowly things start coming into her life for her to see, like, no, this is not what life is like for everyone. They do actually go to England for a little bit. And that to me was one of the saddest parts, is when she's reflecting on her mom, looking at all of the things that are available that they will never have at home, and how easy it is for other people in other countries versus her having to scrounge to put everything together for her children. So that was really heartbreaking. As a teenager, Kassabova will, with her family, move to New Zealand. We don't hear like anything about her life in New Zealand. As an adult, she does move to other countries. She becomes a world nomad, where she lives in like Ireland, and she goes to Scotland. She lives in other European countries. And then the other second half of the book is her coming back. The beginning of the book comes with her coming back to like the family apartment that they still have in Bulgaria, although not everyone lives there. Some aunts and uncles still live there. And so she'll visit some of them, and she really talks to them about, is my memory of what life was like here what life really was like here, or is it distorted? Like, do these things really happen, and how did things change after the fall of communism? So she goes into these smaller towns. She brings a friend with her, and he sees it from a totally different perspective from her. So she is comparing communistic Bulgaria to modern day Bulgaria, which I can see why you would do that, to look at one country from two different perspectives. I would have loved to see her compare her life up until, I think she's like 14 when they leave, to the later half of her teen years in New Zealand. Like, to have that communistic and capitalistic societies differ for someone in their youth. That's what I would have loved to see, that perspective of. Again, we don't get a lot of life in New Zealand. She is a fantastic writer. The things that she writes, so beautiful. I have a bunch of little sticky notes all over the place. Let's see if I can grab a quote from you. Oh, also, there's a little callback to one of our previous books. She talks about The Thornbirds, which was our Australian read in here, because she watched the television production of it with Richard Chamberlain. And so I was like, we get a little callback to what we have seen before. She talks about, she's got a younger sister. Let's see. Oh, this is the quote that I wrote down. So when she talks about, she said, I was happy. Like most people on our side, I had internalized oppression. The wall was already inside me, the bricks and mortar of my 11-year-old self. The wall wasn't a place or even a symbol of anymore. It was a collective state of mind, and there is something cozy, something reassuring in all things collective, even a prison. So she's very reflective of her experience and the experience that she's having as an adult to go back to this country that is so different than what it was before. This is not a translated book. She lives in English-speaking countries, so I enjoyed it. I wish I would have seen a little bit more of her life in other places versus strictly Bulgaria, but it was really enlightening and an interesting read. Hey, thanks for stopping by. Next month, I only have one read for us, and this is for Burkina Faso. So there wasn't a lot of options for that, but this one sounded really interesting, and so far I'm really enjoying it. So if you're interested in what we have read or what's coming up, please visit us on Goodreads and Instagram. See you then.